good morning. Happy Mother's Day. Welcome to Vineyard Christian Fellowship's Sunday morning sermonette. I know I'm a new face for some of you, so I'll introduce myself. I'm April Thomas, and I am Doug Thomas's daughter-in-law. And he thought that since it's Mother's Day, it might be nice for a mom to share some perspective on this Sunday, so that's why I'm here. For those of you who do know me, you've probably heard our story from my husband, Jonathan. He shared a beautiful story about pennies from heaven, just about the trials and the joy that we went through in this season of our life. And so the story that hasn't been shared is mine, and I thought that this would be a great time to break that out and share it with you. And I think that some of the things that God did for me or revealed to my heart during this season are very fitting for the things that we're going through as a country, as a world right now with everything that's going on. So bear with me as I share my story with you, and hopefully it will have a few little things in it for you as well. So just a little bit of a backstory. My husband and I have three beautiful boys, James, Jonah, and Judah. Judah, of course, is our newest addition and probably the main topic of this story today. And to be honest, from the very beginning, he was kind of a miracle because my husband and I had not planned on having more children. He was pretty content at 2, and for me, I never really felt content with 2. I always wanted another baby, and we talked about it a lot over the years, and it was just something that he just really wasn't comfortable with, and so I honored that, but it didn't mean that I didn't still want it and didn't still bring it up from time to time or all the time, but it just was this unsatisfied spot in my heart. And some of you moms probably know, like, when you're not done having babies, there's still this void in your spirit of, gosh, I just want one more. I just want to smell their little hair one more time, you know? It's just, there's something in you that just doesn't feel finished, and that's how it felt in my heart. And so I prayed a lot that God would soften his heart in that area, and that there would be some way that we could come to an agreement on having another child. And we went through some pretty dry and dark seasons in our marriage, and in light of this really dark season, we had this incredible season of breakthrough, and God did beautiful and fruitful things in our marriage in that season. And from that season, Judah was conceived. There was just this miracle moment where Jonathan came and said, I really feel like the Lord told me that we needed to have another baby, that I needed to honor your heart and your desire in this way, because I know how much it means to you. And so we decided to have another baby, and Judah was conceived. And from the minute that I got pregnant this time around, there was something that was different. With my first son, Jonah, just to clarify, James is not my biological son. He's my stepson. And so from the time that I was pregnant with Jonah, it was just the best experience. I remember coming to Jonathan and telling him that I wanted to birth out of hospital, and he about lost it. He was not thrilled with the idea. And I just remember sharing with him that there was something so uncomfortable to me about it. And I'm a pretty private, modest person when it comes to certain things, and I just remember telling him that the idea of a room full of strangers and bright lights and so many things beeping, and it just made me feel claustrophobic, just the thought of it. And so we ended up deciding to have Jonah at a midwife center, and it was the perfect experience from start to finish. My pregnancy was wonderful. I had the best baby shower and the best maternity photos, and my labor and delivery was nothing short of amazing. It was everything anyone could hope for from a beautiful natural delivery. And so, of course, going into this pregnancy, that was my thought, was that's what it's going to be like. I'm going to have this beautiful birth experience again. And I think in my heart, that was part of the allure to having another baby, was having that beautiful pregnancy and having that beautiful delivery. And there was a part of my soul that wanted that. And that was a part of what I wanted in having another child. And from the very beginning of this pregnancy, it was different. I had some health complications before I got pregnant. I had a lot of external stressors in my life, and my blood pressure was very high, and I was kind of in the mode of eating healthier and making better choices and trying to be more active and exercise and remove some of those external stressors so that, I could get back to a healthier state of mind. And in the middle of all of that, we ended up getting pregnant. And we had decided that we were just going to trust God's timing. So we just trusted God's timing. And I went and made my first appointment with a midwife, and my blood pressure was too high. And as much as we wanted it to not be, there was just no way that she could deliver my baby. So my very first baby appointment with the midwife, I risked out of care, and I was devastated. And I know that probably doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but I think because I had such a beautiful experience and I carried that expectation into this next pregnancy, to not be able to deliver in a place I felt safe was really hard for me. And it took me a long time to recover. I went through a couple of doctors because I just wasn't satisfied with the people I was seeing. And the idea of having a birth at a hospital was looming in the back of my mind. I knew there was no alternative, and I felt trapped by it. And it just kept going downhill from there. So I had one weekend where I just didn't feel very good. My face felt very hot and flushed, and I had just not been feeling well at all, very dizzy and lightheaded. So Jonathan went and bought a blood pressure cuff, and we took my blood pressure at home, and it was through the roof. So I called and I made an appointment to see my doctor first thing Monday morning. And when I went in to have my blood pressure checked, she came right in and said, "I want you to go to the hospital to be admitted," which is not what anybody wants to hear. So I was admitted to the hospital, put on bed rest. I had to have IV drugs to control and manage my blood pressure because the oral medication that I was given, I was on the maximum dose, and it wasn't lowering my blood pressure. They tried to release me a couple times, and I ended up back in the hospital again within hours. And so I stayed in the hospital here for a while, and everything was good. And they were maintaining my blood pressure with IV medication, and the plan was to just keep me in the hospital and keep the baby cooking as long as possible. And I made peace with that plan, and everything was going well, and I seemed to be improving. The baby was healthy. And then one morning, one of my test results came back that was not good, and they came in and told me that I was going to be transferred to Medford because the specialist, the fetal maternal specialist, is in Medford, and they monitor moms who are high risk over there. So I was transferred by ambulance, which was scary and kind of cool all at the same time. And the plan was for me to maintain in Medford as long as possible. And because at this point I was only 26 weeks pregnant. So the baby needed to be in as long as humanly possible to give him a chance. So they sent me over to Medford, and I was there for a day and a half, I think. And the maternal fetal specialist came in and talked with me. He said that things were looking okay and we could probably make it at least a few more weeks. The next morning I had my 27-week ultrasound, and they told me that the baby was 1 pound, 6 ounces, and that he was looking good and everything was fine, and I felt good. And then a few hours later, the nurse comes rushing in, and she's carrying all this equipment, and she has this these nurses coming in behind her, and she said, I don't know if the doctors had time to come in and talk with you yet, but there's some complications and we need to take the baby today, right now. And it was just like an anvil hit my chest. I remember calling my husband on the phone in a panic, and I just said, they just came in and told me that they're taking the baby, and he's only 1.5 pounds. He's not going to survive. There's just no way that 1 pound, 6 ounce baby can survive. So he rushed to meet me at the hospital, and I met the doctor that was going to be delivering the baby about 10 minutes before they wheeled me into the ER or the operating room. And before we went in, they had the neonatal NICU surgeon doctor come in and talk to us. And it was so overwhelming and so scary, you know, and the NICU doctor is telling us that 5% of babies that are this young and this small die instantly. They don't survive the delivery, and that 20% of these babies have serious medical complications and don't end up living, and more than 50% of them have these kinds of situations where they struggle with this for the rest of their life, or they have, serious medical issues. Basically, lots of people coming in and telling you a bunch of scary things that you don't want to hear right before your baby is born emergently. And so Judah was born that day, April 24th, and he weighed 1 pound 7 ounces and was 13 inches long. And I remember watching this tiny 1.5 pound baby go through things and endure things that I couldn't imagine enduring as an adult. Having tubes put in his lungs to drain the fluid, being poked and prodded, ultrasounds, eye exams. He had surgery at 6 pounds to repair 3 hernias, blood transfusions. And as a mom, it's so hard to watch your child go through that and not be able to do anything to take away the pain, to fix it. It was just a really high and low season for me, for us as a family. It was incredibly difficult to not be able to tuck my other child in every night, for him to constantly be wondering why his mom is gone, to want to be there with him and also want to be with your baby. It's just tearing on your heart to be caught between worlds and wanting to be in 2 places all the time. I just remember asking, why, Lord? Like, we trusted your timing, you said that this came out of such a fruitful, beautiful breakthrough in our marriage. Why have we gone through so many trials? Why do I have to sit here and hold this tiny baby, not knowing whether or not I'll actually get to take him home? I remember thinking about trying to connect with him and trying to build this bond by skin to skin, and going every day so he'd hear my voice and know my smell. And the whole while in the back of my mind, while I'm holding him, I'm thinking the worst. I have to prepare my heart for not being able to bring him home. I have to prepare myself for losing this baby. I remember calling my husband, and he told me he was setting up the crib that weekend. And I remember telling him I wanted him to wait because I couldn't bear the thought of coming home to this beautiful crib set up for this baby that didn't make it home. Question that kept ringing in my heart was why, was I supposed to wait? Did we not hear something? Did we hear wrong? Did we jump the gun? Were we too impulsive? Is this our fault? Is this your plan? And if it is, why? Just all the questions that you ask. This beautiful, perfect birth that I had in my mind was just in tatters, and not only that, but it just so happened I have 2 siblings, 2 sisters that are younger than me, and I had always dreamed of, as does anybody, having their baby with their best friend or their sister, but not one, but both my sisters got pregnant at the same time, and we were due just months apart from each other. And all these things kept going through my mind. I never had a baby shower. My sisters and I are never going to get baby bump pictures together of these cousins growing. I'm not going to get a chance to have maternity pictures with Jonah, which I know he would have loved. And then this wave of guilt for even feeling that, your child is alive right now. Like, you should just be thankful that he's alive and not feeling all of this remorse. And those kinds of things just plague your heart in that season. I think if you've not been there, it's hard to really understand, but you just get these waves of overwhelming grief and then overwhelming guilt that you feel grieved, and then joy that your child is alive, and then fear, and then it's just so touch and go and so scary. And through it all, I just kept asking why. And I just feel like I remember hearing this thing. My husband is an avid Mario Murillo fan, and I love him too. And I just remember reading this book together, Critical Mass, and one of the things that he talks about is the dark night of the soul. And I want to read this excerpt from his book. It's a little lengthy, but it's worth it. And just to kind of explain a little bit of, I think, what I was feeling in this season, and I kept hearing that. This is your dark night of the soul. So it says, another key similarity between revival and nuclear fission is a strange phenomenon that occurs right before the atom splits. The nucleus actually depresses. Scientists observe that the neutron bombardment, which seemed to be changing the nucleus, now shows no sign of reaching critical mass. Nothing seems to be happening at all. That is also what happens right before a manifestation of God's glory. The revival core will be praying and sensing a rising tide of power and expectancy. All of a sudden, you hit a brick wall. The power is gone. God's presence seems to have lifted. Your prayers feel trapped in your mouth, and a deep despair settles in. You feel physically drained. This is the dark night of the soul. This is where every revival pioneer has been before you, and now it's your turn. It will take everything in you to keep moving. The sobering fact is that many who have reached the dark night of the soul have retreated. Eternity will reveal a long, sad history of near revival misses. Let me state emphatically that 90% of revival is getting to the point where an unshakable resolve is born. Everything you have done before you reach this dark night will seem unimportant. It is what you do now that makes or breaks your heart's desire. At no other time does God express love more than when He allows this time of total emptiness. God risks being misunderstood. He faces the potential of one of His children walking away, frustrated and confused, but He believes the good it will produce is well worth the risk. And I remember feeling that in my spirit, that God, whatever you're doing, that you keep reminding me of this dark night of the soul. It's because whatever you have in this season is worth the risk of shattering my dreams, of shattering my expectancy, of shattering my reality. And I'm also reminded of David in the cave in this season. I love the story of David, and I just want to read a small part out of 1 Samuel 22, 1 through 2. It says, David departed from there and escaped to the cave of Adullam, where his brothers and all his father's house heard it. They went down there to him, and everyone who was in distress, and everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was bitter in soul gathered to him. And he became commander over them, and there were with him about 400 men. And I thought it was interesting, and I often wondered why, in David's season of brokenness, does God bring broken people around him? And I think that the answer is that David needed that season to draw strength from watching despondent people be encouraged into faith. And that in that cave of isolation, he built his future. He amassed his army. And in our season of isolation, because that season felt isolating, just like what we're going through right now. We had so many people surround us, wonderful people who did wonderful things for us. My sister-in-law came and stayed with me in Medford when Jonathan and Jonah were both sick and couldn't come and visit, so I wasn't alone. She stayed with me for almost a week, I think, and we had people that would just drive over there with us just to keep me company on the drive to Medford and sit outside the NICU and pray while I held my baby. We had families from the school that had preemie babies before that put together baskets of clothes and gift cards and comfort items and all the things that they knew we needed in that season. We were blessed with so much financial help. People made meals. People called. They sent us letters. We just had such an outpouring of love. And none of us are perfect. So God brings so much around us in these seasons of our life, and He uses imperfect people to do that. I want you to hear that. Through that outpouring from others, we were able to pour out in this season of complete emptiness. We were able to pray with nurses. I remember being in bed rest here in Grants Pass, and I was there all day in the hospital, and the nurses would come in and take wonderful care of me, and they would share stories and talk with me, and I remember some of them opening up and being able to pray with them for the things that were grieving their heart, and praying with some of our night shift nurses about their situation, and talking about Jesus until 3 o'clock in the morning when the blood pressure cuff was keeping me awake and I couldn't sleep. And I just remember other families being able to bless them financially because of the prosperity that we were given in that season, and being able to meet these families at the Cheney house and pray with people and make connections. And there was so much happening in that season, seeds that were planted that we're still seeing fruit from at the end of all of this. Forward to 1 year later, Judah's healthy, he's strong, he's growing, he's a joy to anyone who knows him. He's so funny, and I just love watching his transformation journey. And I wish that I could sit here and say that that's all it is, that there are never moments where I think back to that dark night of the soul, but a year later, there's still aftershocks. There's still tremors and night terrors. There are moments of grief and pain and unexpected emotions that hit me out of nowhere. And I still have things that come up that I didn't expect. My heart still hurts a little when I see a woman that's pregnant, because there is still a part of my heart that grieves that third trimester, that grieves those things that I lost, that grieves feeling those, baby wiggles and being able to deliver my child. And I know it seems silly to some people, and sometimes your dark night of the soul might seem silly to some people because they don't understand your journey. And that's okay. I continue to trust that my dark night of the soul, the dark night of the soul that we went through as a family, is going to be worth the risk. That we're going to continue to step forward into everything that God is calling us into. And that all these things that are still churning up, all these things that still happen, are just going to be things that God weeds out further, things that God uses to deepen our character, things that God uses to continue to pour out blessing in the future. I want to leave you with this. We may not always understand what God is doing. We can blame the government, we can blame wicked people, we can even blame God. It's so hard when you go through something that's trying on your soul and every part of you is asking, why is this happening? To not point fingers, to not say, it's my fault, it's your fault, it's somebody else's fault. Why does God let this happen? But if we can learn to lean in, if we can watch the small openings that happen, that pierce through the darkness, if we can learn to trust Him in every season of our life, even the dark night of the soul, and watch what He does with it, we will not be disappointed. He always has the victory. I want to challenge you with this one thing. Don't let this season that we're in, if this is your dark night of the soul, maybe it's just a really rough season, maybe you just find yourself in a pit. It's not the bottom, but it's not the top, and you don't like where you are. Don't let this season of your life be a near revival missed. Don't let it be an opportunity for God to plant deep seeds that will bear good fruit go to waste because of your own bitterness, your own questioning, your own fear, your own anxiety. These are the seasons that God is pruning. These are the seasons that God is manifesting that love in a deep way, like Mario Murillo says. This dark night, whether it seems like it or not, is for our benefit. And I can stand here on the other side and say, I didn't like it. There are parts of it I still don't like. And I'm not standing here saying, yay, I'm so glad that I went through the ugliest season of my life thus far. But I am standing here and saying that as much as I kicked and screamed through some of it, I'm happy for the fruit that is born in my life after it. So I want to challenge you with that. Press in, see His hand at work in all things. Not every thorn is meant to be ugly. Some of them are meant to push us towards something better. So hang in there, trust Him, know that He is good, and know that there's an army amassing around you, even in your cave of isolation. There are people here to pray for you, to help you, to pick you up. They're a phone call away, they're an email away, they're a text away. If you need it, reach out, because your army will surround you. I know from experience. So I just want to leave you with that. Happy Mother's Day and bless you all, and we'll see you back here next week.